Hi, I'm Andrea Ivory, your host of Living for Longevity, a podcast designed to help you live your best life, presented by the Women's Breast and Heart Initiative, a nonprofit organization that transforms and saves lives through disease prevention and early detection. Today, I am honored to introduce our distinguished guest, Christine Handy, Victoria's Secret model, breast cancer survivor, self-proclaimed athlete. Also, she's a philanthropist. And really intriguing, she's a cancer disruptor. Christine, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
We're excited to have you. So, all women are at risk for breast cancer. 1 in 8 women will be diagnosed over their lifetime. Breast cancer is the leading cause of cancer deaths worldwide. And sadly, in the United States, more than 43,000 women, our mothers, our sisters, our daughters, our grandmothers, will die from this disease. When detected early, breast cancer is treatable and beatable. And so today we are so honored to have our esteemed guest, a breast cancer survivor, because October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and we don't want to talk about the disease. We want to talk about beating the disease. So, Christine, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's get to it. First, let's learn more about you. Tell us more about yourself.
I love that you said I'm a self-proclaimed athlete. That's really cute because I have to say I was the healthiest unhealthy person when I was diagnosed with cancer. And I really was a self-proclaimed athlete. I'm not obviously a professional athlete. I always wanted to be, but so going back in time, I started modeling when I was very young. And that really was my entire career until my 30s, well within my 30s. And then I had a series of illnesses, including breast cancer, which ultimately I thought would end my career, which, by the way, when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I wasn't worried about my career. I was worried about raising my sons, which is the most important job I have in my life. But it did impact, obviously, my whole life. So I went back to modeling about 3 years ago when I lost my chest to I had mastectomies back when I had breast cancer, but I had implants. Fast forward 7 years, I had breast implant illness and the recalled implants, which ultimately developed an infection, almost killed me. And I had those excavated, and then I had a concave chest. And it was in those months of physical duress where I was just angry and frustrated. All the messages I was getting on social media of women saying they were ashamed of what they look like with a concave chest and didn't want to show it to their husbands and would wear prosthetics. And I have no problem with what anybody wears, but they felt like they needed to cover it up. And so I called my modeling agency and I said, I'm coming back to work. And at the time I was 50 and they were like, okay, that's cute, but let's talk about this further. And I said, no, if this is not what you want to do, that's fine. But I'm going to get this done because I need to represent women who think that their self-esteem is dependent on other people. I need to represent women who think that because they have scars, that means they are less than, and that's not true. So I'm a voice of hope. I'm a voice of truth, which is my self-esteem comes from within. I dictate my life and my future. And so whether I have a concave chest or a scar on my arm matters nothing to my worth. So that's very briefly, I could go on forever about this because I'm very passionate about it. But especially after years and years and years of being in the modeling space where I felt like my external was more important, when everything is taken away and you have to readjust and refocus, that's a choice. What are you going to refocus on? Are you going to go back to the external accolades and dependency on the world? Or are you going to go back to figuring out who you really are inside? And then step in that direction. And I realized then that what my focus was anything it was, I was going to become that. And so I wanted to be a voice of hope, and that's what I sought out to do.
Well, and you've done it quite well.
I hope so.
So, and when I was talking to people about you
Oh boy.
and how excited we were to have you as our guest, one of the questions that they asked me that I said, you know what, I'm just going to have to ask her because I have no idea.
Yeah.
How did you become a Victoria's Secret model?
I guess the best way to describe it was when my chest was excavated I actually signed papers in the hospital that said when my chest was excavated with the breast implant illness, it said mastectomy left side, mastectomy right side. And have 104 fever and have this infection in my chest and it's like 11 o'clock at night. I'm about to have emergency surgery. And I'm kind of like, does that say mastectomy? I had mastectomy 7 years ago. I was like, I'm so confused. And they said, oh, just sign it. It's for insurance reasons. Now, in my head, I'm saying to myself, I've had now 4 mastectomies. What people say to you, the words they use, what they write matters. And that affected me and that upset me. And so, I had a big social presence at that point. And I realized that I could use my voice to share with these women what I talk about a lot, which is my self-worth does not depend on whether I've had 1 mastectomy, 2 mastectomies, 3 mastectomies, 4 mastectomies. It doesn't matter. My self-worth is from within, and my self-confidence is from within. In fact, and I'll go back to the Victoria's Secret. Yesterday, somebody said to me, if you're doing a live interview, you should wear like ruffles or something. Now, I happened to wear.
I happened to wear ruffles.
But she was
wasn't intentional.
She was talking about a specific shirt that had ruffles, so it made it look like, kind of full here. And I said, why would I choose to wear that? And she said, well, it makes it look fuller, maybe like you have a chest. And I said, I don't choose my clothes based on whether it makes it look like I have a chest. The image that I have right now is exactly what I'm supposed to be. Whether you like it or not, whether it makes you uncomfortable or not, does not matter to me. So, and by the way, I say that very gracefully.
Yes, but the truth is the truth.
So I said to my manager, I said, I'm getting all these messages from women and my heart is breaking. So let's take my history in the modeling world. Let's use my voice. Let's reach out to brands like Victoria's Secret and Sports Illustrated and Cupshe, which is a huge bathing suit brand. And let's see if they will collaborate with us so that we can be a bigger voice. Because, of course, collaboration is in, competition is absolutely out. And so ultimately we got to them. My manager is a tough cookie. And she got me a meeting in New York. I flew up there and I had a lovely meeting with some of their PR people. And ultimately it went on to 3 or 4 meetings. And eventually they said yes.
That is super exciting.
Yeah.
Congratulations
Thank
to
you.
us all.
Yes.
You, it's not just for you. We have
It's
choices.
not for me, actually.
Right. We have choices.
Yeah.
We have absolute choices.
Yes.
And no one should feel less than because they pick whatever path they choose. And I appreciate your boldness. I know a couple of people who opted not to have reconstruction. I am a breast cancer survivor myself. I had a bilateral mastectomy. Thank God only one. It's 2 or 3 or 4th. It's scary to me.
It was painful.
That is. But I chose a different route, you know, but I appreciate your boldness. And, the earlier breast cancer is detected, the better your prognosis or outcome. And you have choices.
Yes.
Because breast cancer, all women are at risk. And unfortunately now, breast cancer is being diagnosed in women at much earlier ages.
Yeah, much younger women.
Yeah, with much more aggressive breast cancers. And so it is really important that all women know their risks, how to reduce their risks, and the benefits and participate in early detection. Now, Christine, your story is fascinating, and we all will learn from this. How did you detect your breast cancer?
It's also a long story. I feel like my life is full of long stories. So I had an arm situation, which I won't tell the whole story, but I have a fused arm, which means this is all cadaver bones and a cadaver Achilles tendon is in here. So I have no function. I have no functioning wrist. So I have no movement. It's fully fused from here to here. And I was living in Dallas and I was up in New York with my then surgeon who was in New York at HSS Hospital. and I had a cast from my fingertips to my shoulder. So for that entire year that I had arm issues, I was kind of reaching out of the shower each time I was in the shower to wash my body. And I would pour liquid soap over my left shoulder and just let it wash my body because I had this huge cast on for almost 9 months.
Wow.
And I was in this hotel in New York City and they didn't have any liquid soap. And I'm fumbling with this cast out of the shower. I cannot get it wet because it's just been fused and I have stitches and all this padding. And so I take this bar of soap and I'm frustrated because I'm in pain. And I take this bar of soap and I wash over my left breast and I immediately feel a lump. Now, had I not had this arm issue, I would have felt it a long time ago because it was right on top of, really right next to my nipple. And so it would have been very obvious. So I felt it and I thought, oh, there's no way. There's absolutely no way that I'm have this whole thing going on and then cancer. And again, I was a self-proclaimed athlete and allergic to sugar and, walk every day and super healthy, I thought. And so then 5 days later, I was diagnosed with an aggressive form of breast cancer, stage 2, level 3 breast cancer. And I thought, wow, this is really, like I said earlier, when things get stripped away, it was like I was getting a cleanse, like everything was being stripped away so I could rebuild myself in a totally different manner.
So you were diagnosed at stage 2. Had you not had that fused arm, you would have been...
Yeah, I skipped a mammogram.
Ooh.
Yeah, 6 months.
Let's talk about that.
6 months prior.
Let's talk about that because what has happened over the course of years since COVID, many women have foregone their mammograms. And so why don't you tell us from your perspective what that meant to you to miss your mammogram?
I didn't think about it for 1 second. I felt like I'm 40 years old. Why do I need a mammogram? I was never doing self-checks. I had no family history of it. It didn't even occur to me that I would get it older in my life. But at 40, no way.
Wow.
Never once thought about it.
Well, this is a good segue into talk about the early detection recommendations for breast cancer because according to science, they begin at 40. You should be getting your mammograms, your screening mammograms, if you're asymptomatic, starting at age 40 and continue to do so as long as you're in good health. And to your credit, all women need to know how their breasts normally look and feel.
Exactly.
And report any changes. I don't care how minute they are to your healthcare provider. And then really, really important is that you know your family history. You have not that actually only 10% of breast cancers are familial.
Right.
Like it's a lot of people think, oh, it's not in my family, it's not going to happen to me, but
that's
only
what I thought.
10% of breast cancers are related to your family history. So I just wanted to stop you right there because when you said I was 40 and I didn't think it was, so many women are like you.
Yeah.
That's
why we're talking about it. Knowledge is power. If we can equip women with how to do the self-exams, because a lot of insurance companies won't allow people to do mammograms younger than that. And like you said earlier, there's a lot of young women in their 20s, and I mentor some of them. And I just lost one of the girls I mentor 2 weeks ago, and she was 37 and holding, she said. In her last social media post, she said, I'm 37 and holding, and she has 2 young kids. So take a person like that who was diagnosed at 34. She's not getting a mammogram because the insurance won't pay for it. And so I think we need to talk about self-checks, right? Doing it yourself. And like you said, getting to know your own breasts. And that shouldn't be taboo. A lot of people refer to me as a cancer disruptor because when I was first diagnosed with cancer, I felt like the scarlet letter with, cancer on my forehead, the shame. Why would I ever feel shame? Because of a disease I had no control over. That was on me. Or that was on, and again, like when my parents were older, or when I was young and my parents were older, they would have parties and their friends would come over and be like, oh, so-and-so has cancer, right? And it was shameful. And so I was like, I'm going to disrupt this space. I'm going to disrupt the modeling space by modeling concave. I'm going to disrupt the cancer space and speak like really loudly about there's no shame involved in this.
So many women, when they're diagnosed, I was one of them. When
Yeah.
I was diagnosed with breast cancer initially, I didn't want to talk about it to my husband. We sat on the steps and just got the news, and I'm like, okay. But then I had this epiphany, and I realized that it wasn't about me. So you are right. So many women associate breast cancer with shame. So we need you to disrupt. We need me to continue to talk about it, because there is no shame in breast cancer. It's not something that we chose, but it chose us for a reason. You to be the breast cancer disruptor, the cancer disruptor, and me to be the heralder of disease prevention and early detection. So thank you for your boldness. And when it comes to the detection of your breast cancer, is there anything that you would have done differently?
Oh, I would have done self-checks starting at a young age. Yeah, I mean, I don't have daughters, I have sons, but trust me, every time, I'm around young women, I'm like, get to know your breasts. And that sounds really weird, but I'm telling you that would have changed the trajectory of my life for sure. That would definitely have changed the trajectory of the girl I mentored who was diagnosed at 34. It matters. And none of us know if it's going to hit us. None of us know when. So, and that's not something that you have to go to a place, make an appointment. You can do it in the shower, do it every couple weeks, whatever, and just get to know them. And that could, change the trajectory of so many people's lives.
Yes, it's very important. We talked about this just a few minutes ago, that all women need to know how their breasts look and feel and report any changes to their physician. And locally in Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties, we have partners. We work with Baptist Health South Florida, Memorial, Jackson, even Mount Sinai, and also, other doctors. And we have a cadre of physicians that we work with, that we can ensure that all women, regardless of their ability to pay, have a right to benefit from early detection. So when you talk about the person that you just mentioned, and we were, memorializing her, we know that, breast cancer is being diagnosed at younger ages. And sometimes we have women who call us and say they feel something, and they don't have health insurance, or they have no idea. That's why we exist. We had our 8th annual 5K walk and run yesterday to raise funds, because all of the services that the Women's Breast and Heart Initiative provides are at no cost to the participants that we serve. So what we do is to ensure that women at least have a right not only to learn what their risks are, but also to go to a physician at no cost to them, just to find out where they are. So kudos and sadness. We've lost in this past couple of months, we've lost 2 women.
Yeah.
And that's why we exist, because no woman has to really die from breast cancer, for the most part, if it's not a real super aggressive breast cancer. But for the most part, if we detect it at its earliest stages, it's treatable and beatable. I am a living proof. You are living proof of the power of prevention.
Yeah.
Okay. So, we talked about your treatment, and I want people to understand, what treatment consists of, and how, you made that strong decision. What made you choose the path that you chose for your treatment plan?
Well, going back to my arm, my arm had just been fused. And so this was made up of cadaver bones and cadaver Achilles tendon. And had I started chemo right away, it would have all dissolved. It would have destroyed my arm. So we had to wait 30 days to start chemo. So immediately my oncologist, who I just found when I had breast cancer, and going back, I had a little bit of a trust issue with doctors at that point, because I had some issues with my arm. And so I had to really go out on a limb in faith and say, okay, this doctor's not like that doctor. And I have to be able to trust doctors again in order to get through this. So that's a big thing. I think you have to be able to trust the people that are telling you what kind of treatment, right? So I had a few different opinions, which I think is
Let's
critical.
talk about those, because I like the fact that you had options. Because you weren't stage 3,
Well,
and certainly not stage 4.
I don't know how many options I had, but
Tell us about those options.
I think, interestingly enough, I met with an oncologist on the East Coast, in the Midwest, and on the West Coast. And the treatment was the same, but different in consistency. So as an example, I did the Red Devil and then Taxol and Herceptin. The same treatment was from all different perspectives, but I did it every week. So I did, and my oncologist said it's like a metronome where we're going to bat it every week. So you know how a metronome goes back and forth? Mm-hmm. The West Coast said, no, we're just going to do treatment once every 3 weeks. We're going to give your body an opportunity to rest and to recover. Mm-hmm. And my oncologist that I actually picked in Dallas, which is where I lived, said, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to let it survive. And then the East Coast doctor kind of was in between that. So it was really interesting for me to see the different time perspectives on how to treat it. I did go with the guy that wanted to treat me every week, and I feel like I almost died many times, in particular 3 nights. And I think he would say this as well as family and friends would say that. There was one time in February, I did chemo for 13 months. There was one time in February, one time in like April. So it was spread out, but there were a few nights where I was very fragile, to say the least. And that was part of his plan, was saying, we're going to get you to the brink of death and then revitalize you. Some doctors would disagree with that because some people die from chemotherapy. And that's not, we don't talk about that. I could have been one of those people, but I trusted him. And part of the reason why he did that was he said, you're young. I never want to see you in here again. And so I believed that philosophy. I think the only optional decisions that I think I personally made, they said I could do radiation or mastectomies, and I chose mastectomies. Now, everybody's treatment's different. Everybody has different doctors. All the different philosophies matter. I'm just telling you what I went through. I have no opinion about what you are going through. Everybody's different. And radiation, I'm saying nothing bad about it. I chose to do the mastectomies, not the radiation. For me, it's worked fine. But again, I also chose to have implants, and that didn't work out so well for me.
It's in your journey, what I always encourage women when they ask me, and a lot of physicians don't agree, but you should always get a second opinion. Always get a second opinion.
I totally agree.
And the fact that you got 3, okay, you got 3 opinions.
I had a problem with my arm. I had to get 3 opinions.
And you made a conscious choice based on what's best for you, and it has bode you well.
Yeah.
Thank you. So if I could say something to our listening audience and those who are watching, if you don't walk away from anything from this story, except that you are the captain of your own ship. No matter what a physician tells you, yes, they have gone to medical school and they know everything, but they don't know you. You know you, and you know what's right for you. And if you listen to Christine, she rationalized everything. She took into account all the treatment plans, and you made the decision that was right for you. I was the same way. When I was diagnosed, it was either a mastectomy, a lumpectomy, and radiation, and 5 years of tamoxifen.
Yeah,
so I started reading about tamoxifen, and I said, ooh, maybe not. And I started reading about radiation, maybe not. So you say mastectomy, no adjuvant treatment, or this path. I am going to go with the mastectomy. I am not married to these breasts. Right. And, I chose reconstruction. Yeah. So it's all about the power that you have within you. And thank you so very much for your story, because women now know they have choice. We have to empower women to understand that they have choice. And you are a shining example of that. How's breast cancer impacted your life?
I would say it's changed my life completely. I think for the better. And this isn't very flattering about myself, but I was very much dependent on external accolades and very depended on material items and what I looked like to other people, what I looked like to society. And again, it's not flattering, but I also don't believe in painting a picture that is perfection or inaccurate. I think social media does that a lot. We all, too many people put the highlight reels out there instead of sharing the true path that they were on. And I refuse to do that, because then I'm not relatable. Then we're not really people. We're just like posing for something. And so I chose differently after I was diagnosed, and I loved who I was before. I'm not condemning myself, but I really respect who I turned into. And I think the disease, I think actually my 3 illnesses all came into this like big storm. I think that shaped me into the person I am today. All I want to do is serve. I feel like I'm a hope facilitator, and I couldn't be more excited to do that every single day that I wake up. And I think, by the way, for a lot of my life, I felt great happiness. I never felt joy, and joy comes from serving.
Well said. Well said. I could not agree with you more. It is part of my story and why I do what I do. And how do you use your platform to inspire others?
Well, I'll give you an example. I was in Berlin last week talking to their parliament about patient advocacy. So I think that, again, I'll go back to, I don't want to say my previous life, but pre-cancer. I didn't think I had a voice. People would refer to me as, oh, that's Christine. She's just a model. And it was really kind of, it wasn't flattering to be called that. You know what I mean? Because they would dismiss me. It was very dismissive.
You were treated like a product.
I was treated like a product. And I accepted it, right? And I accepted that for a long time, too long. And I accepted the fact that I believed I didn't have a voice. So once I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I thought, oh boy, I do have a voice. And if I die tomorrow, I'm going to use it. And so I've gotten to a place where I have more of a global voice instead of just in the United States. And so I use my voice often, every single day, whether it's in interviews. I have a book out. I have a book. My book is made into a film. It's coming out in theaters. And I use my voice on social media. I use my voice on podcasts. So whenever I get an opportunity to share my story, because again, I include the vulnerability parts and the non-flattering parts, then I take it, because it's important for people to see the difference between, what it looks like to meditate on society versus what it means to meditate on serving. Those are 2 different things.
Completely. And the rewards are completely different as well.
Right.
And all that you've done, all of the accolades, all of the money that you've made, there is nothing that could compare to the joy that you feel from serving others.
Yes.
I always say, if I could bottle that
Yes.
and sell it, I wouldn't have to worry about how we're going to fund this work.
Yeah.
The money would just keep rolling in, because we'd have a product to sell and people don't understand it. Nonprofit organizations are not like for-profit. We don't have a product or a service to sell. We give away our services to help others. So thank you so very much for all that you do. And, as you travel the globe, and this is very intriguing, breast cancer looks one way in the United States. Yeah. And most people don't understand how blessed we are in the United States. You've had a chance to go to other places around the globe. Tell me about some of those places and how breast cancer is viewed. Is it a stigma? Here, it's not so much a stigma anymore.
Anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is more. I haven't been to all of the places, obviously. I do hear from people from around the world who say to me, this one particular woman who lives in Anguilla, she is not allowed to leave her house without prosthetics. Not allowed. She's not allowed to show up at work without prosthetics on. So there's a stigma there. The reason I went to Germany to speak with the leaders there is to talk about, so as an example, 45% of their new oncologists in Germany are women. Those oncologists are being treated differently by the other male oncologists. This is not my opinion. This is what was shared with me. So I was there to help empower these oncologists with how to, one, to stand up and be very proud of what they are doing, but also to give them kind of ideas on better patient care. And so they are trying to equip the female oncologists with information. And so I'm a part of that. So I don't think that in the world things are as equal as they are in the United States. I certainly don't think it is there. But I think we all have a room to grow, for sure. All of us. I mean, I think the stigma in the United States is obviously much less, but I think that has room to grow as well.
Well, thank you for being part of that process. We often here in the United States take our health care for granted, the choices that we can make for granted, because in some countries you don't have choice.
Yes.
You know, you're told this is what we're going to do, and you just sit there. So here we have a voice, and I'm so glad that you're going around the globe using your voice to empower other women and to educate them about what they can do to reduce their risks, and certainly the value of early detection. Early detection is key. Now, please, if there was one piece of advice that you can give our audience, one thing that you can share with them, what would it be?
I think in general, we as a society are really tough on ourselves, and we give each other so much grace. We need to give that to ourselves.
Mm.
And when I started to give myself grace instead of living this like high pressure modeling life and trying to fit into some sort of box, I started to really like sit in with myself and do a lot of introspective work and give myself grace. Not knowing the answers and not knowing my future and not understanding how I was going to get through the treatment. All of that is grace. And when I started to do that, I lived a more peaceful life. And so I would just remind everybody that that grace you extend to others, really give that to yourself. It's critical for self-care. And we really do need to do more self-care. And I'm not talking about going to get a massage.
But that's not bad either.
It's not. No, it's great. It's a luxury. It's a luxury.
It's a luxury. I love them.
But it's a luxury. And don't get me wrong. I think those are really important, especially in healing. But it's what we say to ourselves inside. And that's really the most important self-care. So if you're giving yourself grace, you're speaking kinder to yourself. And when you're not speaking kind to yourself inside your head, that's creating a lot of havoc in your life.
And do you often talk to women about empowering themselves to give themselves grace? Because I'm glad
Yes.
you're mentioning that, because we generally don't. We beat
Yes.
ourselves up all the time.
Exactly.
We're not good enough. We're not a good mother. We're not a good wife. We're not good this. We're not good. So how do you empower other women? How do you break through that stigma, that self-imposed stigma that we're not enough?
Well, I think it starts from that introspective work where you have to really think to yourself every single day, what am I saying? What am I really saying to myself? And you have to catch yourself. And sometimes it's so automatic. We just go, well, I'm sure I'm nice to myself. Well, when you start to write it down and we start to really pay attention, you really don't say that many nice things about yourself in your brain. And so when you shift and start to really talk kindly to yourself and really look in the mirror and say, I love you, you're worthy, and do those types of exercises that are really uncomfortable in the beginning. But once you start to do it, you feel empowered and you feel tougher and stronger, especially people that are going through difficult times and trauma and treatment. Then you shift and your focus changes. Instead of being a victim, you feel like more of a vine. And that's empowering. And so if you build your self-esteem, all of that adds some power to your base and to your heart and to your into your head. And I think that whole momentum keeps us on a steadier, a more stable path.
I loved that phrase that you just used, and we're going to unpack that a little bit.
The victim and the vine?
Yes, we are. That's exactly where I'm going. Don't be a victim. You don't mind if I steal that?
No.
Don't be a victim, be a vine. Let's talk about both of those. Let's start with the good one first, the vine. How do you think a vine means that you're being good to yourself?
Well, when I think of being a victim or a vine, I think of how I presented myself to my friends, to my family, to my sons, to myself. And when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I was a total victim. How could this happen to me? I already have this arm. How could this be? I mean, all these things. How? Why? Doesn't matter. It exists, right? Instead, I turned that corner. Once I turned that corner, then I started to show courage. And when I showed courage, even when it was really hard to show courage, I was being a vine. I was showing courage to my sons. I was teaching my sons courage under fire. I was showing courage to my friends that were showing up for me because they were showing me courage by showing up. And so when you start to shift, even if you don't believe it in the beginning, even if you don't feel that courage, eventually your body and your mind will follow up with it. It'll eventually believe that. And so I think that, that's being a vine. Whether you're on social media, whether you're on a podcast, it doesn't matter. That you don't have to be a vine in that way. You just be a vine in your family, just to be your vine in your own home. Be a vine to yourself and shift that conversation in your head. If you say to yourself, why me? That's a victim. If you say to yourself, why not me? That's a vine. And so I want to be a vine every day, especially to myself. And then you show that to other people, and then they can borrow your courage. You know, how many times do you have bad days where you're like, I just need to borrow somebody's courage? And you go on social media and hopefully you follow people that are motivating people and you can see their courage, But part of courage comes from vulnerability. If you're just watching on social media stories about people that are on vacation and have this perfect life and have these beautiful bags, and that's not going to help you. That's
not generally real either.
It's not, but a lot of people believe it is. And so you have to be careful who you follow.
Yes.
And so that's the two difference between the victim and the vine is why me, why not me? And if you follow that rule, your life will change dramatically.
I absolutely concur. When I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I never asked why me.
Oh, I did.
Instead, I asked what for. No, never asked.
A lot.
No.
I mean, for months.
No, it's
so bad.
It becomes life when you get to the point of life where you're looking for your purpose.
Oh yeah, no, I was hiding from that, but I found it.
Well, you found it.
I found it.
You found it. You found it.
Which is why I'm a good speaker, because I can talk about both.
Right. And it's so important that you take those things in life that
gracefully
and take them and turn them into something positive, because you're not alone. Just like you went through breast cancer. I don't know if people went through the fused arm at the same time they went through breast cancer. That's a first, but your challenge can definitely inspire someone else and give courage to someone else who's going through the same thing. And I always tell people to look at the light at the end of the tunnel. You are the light at the end of the tunnel. You had to go through that tunnel. Not a good tunnel, but you had to go through it. And that you saw that light. Now you are that light. Yeah. And now you are sharing your light with others. So thank you so very much for this amazing conversation and who you are, and keep doing that. And I always close with gratitude, because life is about gratitude. People think I'm crazy, and I'm sure that you do this too. I thank God for my breast cancer, because if I was not diagnosed with breast cancer, I would not have the perspective that I have. I would not have the opportunity to share. And I'm sure you feel that way too.
Yeah.
So in giving gratitude, I always close with that. And I'd like to especially thank a gentleman. We talked about him a little bit earlier. Yeah. I'm sorry he's not here. His name is Maritz Acosta. He is the reason that we are here. He has his own nonprofit as a high school student who is equipping the next generation to be leaders and to be strong in civic engagement, was something that we learned about a little bit later, but he's teaching the next generation to be proactive in that. He's doing amazing things locally, statewide. He's even been to Washington, D.C. to meet our elected officials at the highest levels. He is amazing. And if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have this Living for Longevity podcast. And then secondly, I'd like to thank the mayor of the town of Miami Lakes, Manny Sid, the outgoing mayor. He's another one that if he just looked at me one day and said, you should do a podcast. And so he's opened his office.
Amazing.
This office where we are, who has a podcast studio in his office, their office, he does. And he invited us in, and it has been so rewarding, because we've had an opportunity to bring on people like yourself to share the light that you have and give hope to so many others. And to you, Christine Handy, our esteemed guest. Keep disrupting, keep shining, keep serving, and keep living your best life. I am your host, Andrea Ivory. Tune in and next month for another episode of Living for Longevity, a podcast designed to help you live your best life. Featured will be stories of triumph over tragedy, lifestyle experts, strategies to help you live your disease deterrent lifestyle, and resources to guide you along your way so that you could live your best life and enjoy more time with family and friends, doing the things that you love to do. Please visit us on our website at flbreasthealth.com. There you can find resources that can guide you to live a healthier lifestyle. And we're even social. You can find us on Facebook and YouTube at the WBHI, and on Instagram and X at WBHI. Please don't forget to subscribe to Living for Longevity. And until next time, live your best life.